Hi, today's chapter is called What the Equator's For. Take a deco at this, Grandad held up a huge knobbly potato. It's a dead ringer from old mate Humdrum. He had a dummy like this spud, all squints and bulges, even the hooter on it. Grandad tapped a knob like a nose, nearly as big as the rest of his head. Was Mr. Humdrum ugly? Ugly? Huh! When he walked down the street, the wires dropped on the telegraph poles, and the dogs howled and stuck their heads under their ears. Why aren't potatoes round like a tennis ball? Well, they're usually more oval-shaped like the old rugby ball. There, that should be enough. How about running them up to the house? Your grandmother's looking for them. Granny, I said, going into the kitchen. Grandad said this potato reminded him of Mr. Humdrum. So it does, the ill-flavoured creature. Granny, have you ever seen a round potato? No, not that I can recall offhand, Granny said, scrubbing the potato under the tap. They're usually oval, except for Mr. Humdrum here. Not like a tennis ball. She shook her head. Grandad came in with another potato. That's about as close to a spud coming out being a tennis ball. It's round enough at the middle. It's a bit flat at the top and the bottom, like the world itself. Grandad, why is the world flat, thicker in the middle? Well, we all get thicker around the middle as we get older. That line is like a belt around the middle of the world, Grandad. What's it called? The equator. Who put it there? Grandad looked over his shoulder. She's boiling the potatoes. Keep your voice down. I drew the equator. You're right. Why? Well, I've got a belt to hold my puckle in, so I thought I'd give the world one too. I sharpened a tea tree stick and walked backwards, scratching a line across the Pacific Ocean, across South America, across the South Atlantic Ocean, across Africa, across the Indian Ocean, and then somewhere up to north of New Guinea. Bump. I came across something that grunted. Why didn't you look where you were going? I didn't need to turn round to know what it was. What was it? Your grandmother had seen me starting off drawing the equator eastwards, so nothing would do, but she must start drawing westwards, and that's how we bumped into each other's bottoms, halfway between Bismarck Sea and Caroline Islands to the north of New Guinea. Ever since then, the world's had a line called the equator around the middle. What's it for? Well, it tells you all sorts of things. Like if you're standing on the equator, you know that's why you're so hot. And when ships run over it, they know they're either in the northern or the southern hemisphere. What about when you and Granny bumped into each other? Well, there was nobody living there as far as I could see. And just as well, too, because the mess your grandmother made joining her line to mine. Ha! Imagine what it'd be like never being able to work out which hemisphere you're in. What happened to your tea tree stick? By the time I bumped into your grandmother, it had worn down to the length of your nose. What did you do with it? Brought it home. Everyone wanted to see the stick that grew the equator, but your grandmother burnt it in her stove. She's always been like that. What about the stick she used? It wasn't worn down like mine. Well, she didn't draw as much of the equator as I did, of course. I split up her stick one day and used it to light my incinerator, and she's never forgiven me. Come and eat your tea, called Granny, or it'll get cold. Better not ask her about drawing the equator around the middle of the world. Your grandmother doesn't like to be reminded that she can't draw straight.